Good morning, everybody. I hope we're going to learn some new stuff here. If I look at the people in the room, I think a lot of you are like me, coming from a different world into this world. Some of us that have been in marketing for a long time came from an offline world, analog world. And this very journey that we're talking about here is certainly very exciting. And I think we're moving forward at a hell of a pace, but I think there's still a lot of challenges. So I hope the panel here today, you and myself included, learn a lot more about the digital journey and specifically about multi-channel attribution. Gerhard Louw is my name. I represent my company, Deutsche Telekom. I represent the World Federation of Advertisers, the WFA. If you guys haven't heard of the organization before, it's basically a grouping of the world's biggest advertisers. So we get together, we talk about things, we talk about data, we talk about... And just to kick off the session, I have a poll for you, a question. I'm not sure if the polling technology is working, but it's such a simple question with the A, B, or C answer. You can just shout the answer, and then we'll see what you guys think. Okay, no. I'm not sure where this data comes from. But the question was, what percentage of large global advertisers are using attribution today? Oh, these are the codes. Oh, no, sorry. I wasn't here yesterday. So what do you think? Let's just go with A, B, or C. You don't need to send a message. So less than 40% of large global advertisers are using attribution today, between 40 and 60%, or more than 60%. I think people aren't using the poll. So A, B, or C, what do you guys think? A, okay, that was a resounding agreement for A. Let's look at the results. Let's just go to the slide.
Gerhard, the results keep coming in. It's live technology.
Okay.
So if people tweet @poll with the code number that's on the screen, okay, then it will display the results.
Okay, but in the interest of time, I think we can move to the answer,
move on then,
because it's clear that people think it's less than 40%. As one that's more than 60, okay, that's good. Can we move to the results? To my result, the slide that I prepared with the actual survey of the advertisers. There you go. There was the question again. And there's the answer. B was the correct answer, between 40 and 60%. And the exact answer is actually 53%. Yes, we do this now. This is basically an online survey that was conducted by the WFA a few weeks ago. I think it's also interesting to see that it's actually a little bit more than you thought. So 50%, 53%. So a lot of people are doing it. Those that aren't are certainly thinking of doing it and are planning to do it in the future. So to shed some more light on this topic, we've got 4 speakers, really divided into 3 sessions. We're going to start with James Daley from Atlas. And James is going to talk about the approach by Atlas and Facebook in terms of attribution. That will be followed by Karl from Data to Decisions, who will talk about their approach. And then we've got a double act with Serge and Rob, Serge from comScore and Rob from Zenith, that's going to give us their approach. So I'm going to ask 1 or 2 questions after each speaker, rather than keep the questions to the end. Okay, so we're going to start with James. Thanks, James.
Okay, give this one moment. Introduction, Zen. My name is James Daley. I lead the global measurement analytics practice for Atlas. As many of you know, Atlas is a third-party ad server serving ads across the web, and it was recently acquired by Facebook, and we'll talk about what that means. So the big problem we're trying to solve for as an industry, and what you've been hearing about a lot this morning, is this transition from cookies to people. And fundamentally, what we've seen looking at Facebook data and looking at this Facebook user base, 73% of them have more than one cookie in a month. In fact, about 25% of them have more than 10 cookies in a month. And this is just on Facebook, given that mapping of people to cookies. Similarly, 60% of people use more than one device type in a month. So you have people using desktop and mobile and tablet, et cetera. So you really have this problem of device fragmentation and even on a given device, multiple cookies over time. And so why is this a problem? We've seen a couple different dimensions of this. First, if you're just trying to understand your reach and your frequency, what we observe is that cookie-based metrics overstate reach by about 58%. And this is a median number for a set of large advertisers on Atlas today. Conversely then, frequency is understated by about 141%. So how does this manifest? It means you think you frequency capped at 10, you've actually delivered 24. And that's because people are on multiple devices, multiple browsers with multiple cookies, and you can't effectively frequency cap. It also manifests for our clients as seeing data showing they've reached more people in the state of California than live in the state of California. More people in France than live in France. I mean, the cookie-based metrics are inherently up. Next, we see it as a problem of targeting. So using Nielsen online campaign ratings data in the US, if you're buying basic demographically targeted media, you're delivering on average about 65% on target. So imagine, again, you're trying to reach women, about 35% of your spend is potentially going to men and is wasted. And so I've shared a lot of bad news. There's actually some good news coming from the transition from cookies to people. And that is cookies fail to capture all of the conversion events that are occurring. So imagine you've marketed to me over the weekend on my home PC, and I get to work on Monday morning and I purchase on my work PC. In a cookie-based world, you can't see across those two events, and so that purchase shows up as a spontaneous purchase. Maybe TV or print get credit rather than digital. But in a people-based world, we know that that's the same person, and we can stitch together that cross-device path to purchase. So how are we doing this? The way to think about this, the real opportunity for Atlas, now that it's part of Facebook, is to use the global Facebook population as an anonymized panel for the purposes of measurement. And so raise your hands if you've been a Facebook user in the last month. Pretty much everyone in the room. So we're all effectively panelists in this measurement platform. It's about 1.4 billion people a month on desktop, about 1.2 billion a month on mobile. And think about all the different devices from which you use Facebook. That is our understanding of an anonymized person on that device. So to be clear, Atlas does not see personally identifying information. We anonymize your Facebook ID, but that said, we can understand that this is an individual that is on this phone and that desktop and this other laptop. And the frequency of use of Facebook is a huge opportunity for us. 40 minutes a day is the global average. And that means we have regular opportunities to re-authenticate who the person is on that device. And then once we have that understanding of people across devices, you get a much more holistic understanding of the path to purchase and the true frequency and how the series of ads leads to business results. So let's give a couple examples of how we're using this. So we were working with a health and diet products company here in Europe, and you don't have to read the eye chart, but just to give you a sense of what it means to infuse ad effectiveness measurement with this understanding of people. We looked at who was reached by ads by age and gender, and then who converted by age and gender to get a sense of the effectiveness of reaching different audiences. And what we find is women convert 33% higher at 33% higher rates than men and require 20% fewer impressions to do so. We find out single women are 50% more likely to convert compared to single men. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You can think of all the dimensions that you use on Facebook for targeting, for measurement, for consumer insights, and think of those as overlays onto your ad delivery. The next piece to think about, now that we're focused on people and we're focused on business results, is getting the metrics right. So for this client, we saw that people who clicked on ads converted 25 times more than non-clickers. 6% of ad clickers purchased. Problem is, non-clickers drove 97% of the sales. So if you're just optimizing for clicks and talking about click-through rates and engagement rates, you're not optimizing for what is actually driving your business. And this is sort of obvious, but it's really powerful, and it leads us to why getting beyond last click attribution, last touch attribution is so powerful. So what we see is, under last touch attribution, and this is a generalized finding that we've seen across all of our clients, but held true for this health and wellness products company, is that last touch disproportionately favors bottom-of-funnel activities like search and retargeting. And in a cookie-based world, you really see no value, last touch or multi-touch, in your mobile buys. But when we move to multi-touch attribution using people, you suddenly see the power of mobile ads to drive desktop purchases. That's huge. We're talking about cross-platform attribution. In one sense, just stitching together mobile into the picture holistically is really powerful, because mobile is no longer some separate thing on an island. You're no longer buying it on faith. You can actually understand the audiences you're reaching and how mobile ads drive desktop events. Similarly, we see things like prospecting and brand building and upper funnel activities gain in credit, and lower funnel activities like retargeting lose credit when we shift from last touch to multi-touch. Again, not surprising, and these are results demonstrated by this client, but that we've seen consistently across. So if I can, in some ways, reiterate what one of the previous speakers said. Did we lose it? There. Sorry, bear with me. Great. This is about people, not cookies, clearly, right? The opportunity here is to use this massive panel of people for ad delivery and measurement. You want to think about reach and frequency holistically across devices. Mobile is no longer special. It's just part of your media mix. You want to drive business results, not the KPIs like click-through rates, engagement rates, likes. That sort of stuff is not what's driving your profitability. And then think about using multi-touch attribution as an always-on strategy to understand ad effectiveness, punctuated by periodic lift tests. And with that, I will hand the baton.
Just one question for you, James. You talk about looking at business results and not the marketing KPIs, but how do we bring the two together?
This is live? Great. So there are a couple ways to think about it. For online conversions, it's fairly easy. You have a conversion tag on the confirmation page of an order, and so you can definitely understand that this was a purchase. For offline conversion events, for example, phone orders for a hotel chain, if you can capture the email address of a user, then we can onboard that data back into Atlas. So for those of you who are familiar with Facebook's custom audiences product or targeting offering, you can hash your CRM, your email lists, join them up against Facebook's set of email lists, and if those email lists exist, you can capture that event. So for digital conversions, it's simply a matter of tags, and for offline conversions, it's about email matching.
Right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Karl.
Thank you, and thank you to Andreas and ICOM for inviting me to speak. It's a real privilege, and had I known about the amazing venue, I'd have arranged to have done this presentation in song and sung it to you operatically, but I haven't done that. It's with some apprehension that I approach the clicker. Let's see how we get on. Yes, total attribution. We are clearly living in a world where marketing is converging, and by that I mean that the marketing message is much, much closer to the consumer action, which is helping our understanding massively. And there's a bit of a theme coming through, which is that good marketing starts with the consumer and works back ultimately. So media is now becoming very much a sensor for understanding of consumers, and consumers are sending us a signal back, and it's data and insight that is essentially that signal. So one of the things that's been really driving the change around data analytics in our industry is just the sheer volume of spend that is now going through on digital. Over 100 billion euros globally spent on digital, representing about 20% of overall spend. That's the sort of thing that we're dealing with. And what we're finding at Data to Decisions is through the thousands of case studies we've done with hundreds of brands and delivering significant value, as you can see from this chart, about €1 billion last year of value to our clients in incremental ROI across a number of markets. As we've expanded over the last 2 or 3 years, what we found is the nature of the questions are really changing for our clients. Previously, clients have been struggling to connect data and marketing. Now, all the time, we're being asked for analytics and marketing, and it's that digital change that's the primary driver. And one of the things that sort of occurs is that we need to put this in context of where we are with specifically on this chart, digital attribution. So attribution in its narrowest sense. It's growing very quickly. In fact, these numbers have probably doubled last year. They may well double next year. But what we're looking at is the proportion of spend here in some 3 major markets that is actually measured using, as I say, in the narrow sense, digital attribution modeling. And the point of this chart is that actually, at the moment, the numbers are still relatively small. There is an awful lot of money being spent elsewhere that also needs to be understood. So what should we do in reaction to that? And this chart is not necessarily for you to read in detail, but what we've done at Data to Decisions is pull together a total attribution technique. It's not about any one particular approach, it's about how analytical approaches come together, accepting there are issues with the data. But we here build a map where we understand how consumers travel through their journey from the left-hand side of media inputs and marketing inputs through to the right-hand side of sales, online and offline. And it's about bringing that together in a connected way for clients. And there's a lot of examples of we've understood all the pipe work here in this connected consumer journey that are interesting. One example I'd give you is for an apparel brand, which we knew that website traffic was connected to their sales, both online and offline, actually. And as we looked at that data and tried to unpick why website visits were going up and down, we could see that there were some spikes. Now, some of those spikes were actually around YouTube hits, and they'd actually connected their website with YouTube views. But equally, there was some offline activity in out-of-home that was going on, and they'd also website visits were being driven to that because offsite was the outdoor spend and outdoor creative was also connecting with the website as well, with the URL. So when you get into this kind of detail and understanding how it is that the marketing is going to work in this complex environment, you're trying to make it simpler, ultimately, for consumers and clients to understand that journey. And in doing so, you're connecting things up across the online and offline. And it's really the creative aspects of that bring that together. And all of this leads to an opportunity. Once we've understood all of that pipe work historically, we can then optimize the inputs going forward. And the opportunity is very significant. What we're finding in the work that we've done in this space is that we're able to double, essentially, the ROI that's generated from connected consumer journeys compared to not having connected consumer journeys. So that's a very significant opportunity for clients. Here's a specific example for a retailer, and retailers have got a significant issue around how traffic and people migrate from a controlled offline experience to an online purchasing behavior. And what we're finding here with this particular retailer is we were able, using these techniques, to identify around 75 million euros of incremental revenue, significant project ROI in itself, and actually increase revenue in this case, not not profit, but revenue of 26% from that marketing investment. And all we're really doing is understanding the pipework and engineering that pipework in a better way. And some of those differences, as I say, can be quite subtle, particularly the example with out of home. So in terms of the kind of the key things that we're finding, when I stand back and look across all the work that we've done in this area, there are really three relatively obvious points, but points that people often forget about what we're doing here. First of all, better content going in. Content that is suitable to travel around the ecosystem is really critical. If the content is not available quickly, there are production issues there, and it's not suitable to travel in the ecosystem of media, then actually the ecosystem won't work in itself. So stuff that goes in is really important. Then there's the pipework and the plumbing of the consumer journey as well. More touch points generally, better connected, gives a much bigger uplift in ROI. And finally, giving consumers the ability to buy at the end with a good CRM and e-commerce function also drives ROI very, very significantly. Thank you.
Thank you, Karl. A question for you as well. We heard this morning so far a few times that cookies are dead or cookies aren't reliable. What is your opinion?
Well, I think it's true that cookies can be very unreliable. I think what's important from what we're doing is to move on from some of the data. The data conversation is very important, but we need to actually do some analysis and actually build some value from that data. We could spend an awful long time trying to perfect the information that we've got, but actually the issue is we need some insight. You either have some insight or no insight, and we could spend years and years trying to sort of work out how to perfect the data. We need to build on what we've got with the techniques that we've got and join them together in that sort of way in order to actually add value to clients ultimately.
So start with what you've got and go from there. Great. The next two presenters, Rob and Serge. Thank you.
So we're going to try something new. Since we're all under a food coma, why don't we all get up and have a quick 2-second stretch? Because we all need it. Let's get up, guys. Let's go.
Sir, do you actually want people to be awake when you're talking? They had a hard night last night.
Only in Seville can you have this, or San Sebastian, I mean. Anyway, have a seat, guys. We're all under a food and alcohol coma. But it's all good. So, comScore and ZenithOptimedia, and we're going to mention we did a case study for Kohls about a panel-based attribution, not a cookie-based attribution. I'm just going to go over what that means, just the methodology around that, and then from there, actually go into the case study itself. I'm going to hand it off to Rob and go from there. So pretty straightforward, but we're glad that we were able to get Kohls to accept their attribution for this case study. So obviously, you know, everybody here has spoken. It doesn't seem, I'm not going to reinforce it too much. Traditional attribution focuses on the retrospective view of the consumer, of transactions. And what ends up happening is you only look at certain digital behaviors. So you don't have a complete view of the landscape. You're only looking at existing customers. You're not looking at prospects. You're not looking at all of their behavior outside of that specific one area of that channel, either it be that site or their CRM transactions. So what we decided to do is we looked at a panel-formed attribution. So obviously, from a comScore standpoint, we have our panel. There are other panels out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a comScore attribution, but panel attribution. But we have to look at things that broaden just the way we're looking at attribution. So instead of just looking at a traditional route to purchase, panel attribution broadens for not only customers, but more importantly, prospects. We all know our customers. We have our CRM bases. We know exactly what they bought. We know what their demographics are. But the key is to find prospects coming into that specific, during that, if it's a holiday shopping season or whatever the case may be, to include their activities outside of your own, of the brand's own content and advertising. So if it's specifically on Kohls, for example, or a specific site, let's look beyond just Kohls. Let's look, you know, what are they doing on search? What are they doing other places than just focusing on Kohls? Not a cookie-based approach, definitely a people-based approach here. From a privacy perspective, there was a question earlier. Obviously, this is all opt-in, so we don't worry too much about that. So on a reduced reliance on the customer reported data means that you can actually expand this. So you can look, I'm going to skip over this one slide, but you can look at things such as you map your digital behaviors, you look at high value segments, you can then look at their behavior or their search. You know, one of the things that we do is when we answer these questions is you want to map the demos and the segments. You want to look at users who didn't see an ad but showed similarity to customers, so lookalike modeling. You want to understand those that saw those ads but didn't engage. View customers non-tagged, so you can actually do some the non-tagged approach behavior away from the site. So people that had nothing to do with Kohls because they're prospects, but they went to a different site. Mapping all of that intelligence is the key for us as we look at this. So with that all said, and since we don't want to run out of time to give you guys the actual case study, I'm going to hand it off to Rob, and then we'll take your questions.
Thanks, Serge. Is this one working? Yeah, great. So thank you very much. You've repeated most of what I'm going to say now. We're going to talk a little bit about how we applied this technique to Kohls and how we developed this. And it was for a specific question. Our EVP of marketing for Kohls challenged us with a specific case. He said for promotions, in retail, for promotions, what we need to do is expand our reach and conversion of prospects, customers that we haven't seen before. So this is important for most retailers. Kohls have a fantastic CRM program. They're really deep into the ability to convert known customers. But what makes their holiday promotions successful is the ability to stretch beyond that and start to reach into unknown prospects. So how can we create a prospect marketing campaign for unknown prospects that we've never seen before? That's pretty tough, and typical attribution doesn't really get us there. So we started with a typical attribution process. So step number one, do some attribution. Find out which transactions, running up to the holiday period, which transactions were driven by advertising. Most transactions are not driven by advertising. As we know from econometrics or from attribution, there's 85% of transactions are business as usual. Some of them we can attribute to advertising. And of those that we can attribute to advertising, most of them are from existing buyers. So this is the actual case study. And some of them, the most important section to increase profit, are those new buyers, those prospects in retailing, those people that you haven't seen before. So the question that we were set is, how do we start to create a better campaign towards those prospects? How do we start to use new techniques to look at people we've never seen before? So first of all, we start with a traditional attribution approach. Most of you have seen this. And what the traditional attribution approach will do is separate out the big buckets of advertising and tell us what's effective for different customer segments. So here we're starting with, on the left-hand side, as you look at it, we're looking at all customers. We can see the buckets of digital advertising and their relative impact on transactions that were driven by advertising. Retargeting, very important, not surprise. Search, very important too. And then some brand sites. So then we start to say, okay, I can separate into, let's look at two key segments. First of all, existing customers. Existing customers, I know retargeting works. That's great. What we really wanted to look at, and the new challenge, was these new customers, unknown customers, what works. So attribution tells us in big buckets, I can start to plot out how search is really quite impactful for new customers. I can go down to the keyword level or the generic level and start to understand that from my traditional attribution approach. But what's really where the difference came, and what we really started to do with comScore, was say, let's move on from this. This is big bucket, but this is not a strategy. This is a tactic. If I want to create a strategy, I have to take those new customers and match it back to comScore panelists so I can look at a three-dimensional view of their behavior, and then I can create a strategy. So by taking those new customers and matching them back to comScore panelists, I get a view of everything they're doing, not just the actions they took when we expose them to advertising. So we move beyond the cookie and into a full three-dimensional view of those new customers who were converted by advertising. So we start to get a much richer picture, and this is where things started to really help us to set a strategy for prospecting. So just in search, I can start to see, well, I can look at precise behaviors across time. I can look at 2 weeks out, 1 week out, up to 1 hour before conversion, and start to understand the volumes and the keywords and the categories that I want to start to impact in a strategy for converting new prospects via the comScore panelists. So this is taking those new, matching those new prospects and putting them into the comScore panel and understanding their full set of behaviors. And that's how we can go beyond just search and start to see all the things that those new converts are doing that would never exist within a typical multi-touch attribution analysis. So we can start to look at things like comparison shopping. When is that relevant? When should we be serving up messages in those sites? We can see things like multimedia or entertainment sites down to the very detail. And when, for those new converts, should we be serving up those messages? How should we structure that campaign? And how do we structure a campaign to really create a strategy for prospecting using that comScore panel match? And we don't just have to do those new prospects. We can then go down to other customer segments as well and start to understand their full three-dimensional behavior. So we can look at high or low value segments, or we can look at repeated or one-time customers. And each one, because each one is then matched to actual respondents in the comScore panel, I have a full view of everything they're doing in the run-up to their transaction, even though they don't exist within the Kohls CRM database. So that's a summary. That's what we did. And this has really helped us to convert an MTA kind of big bucket allocation of money to a strategy, to be able to understand how we should be laying down this money with specific messaging at specific times, encompassing the full behavior of people. And we see this as a kind of unique addition to the MTA space, where we're able to add an enhancement that's true advertising-driven prospecting to give us a strategy that we think is quite unique.
Great. Thank you very much. We talked before about the offline-online journey. I think what you showed here for Kohls is clearly the online journey, yeah, the digital journey. How about the offline world?
Well, so I'll pass across to Serge in a second, but from our perspective, the more that we start to weave into the offline world in that initial MTA analysis then helps us to then match those people who respond to different offline prompts, and we can have a look at their behavior on the comScore panel as well. So you can start to expand the view. So here we looked at digital behavior. If within the MTA analysis we had also looked at email response or CRM response, all of those things, then because you're matching it back to panelists, you get a full view of those people who respond there as well. So the technique still stands. You want anything to add?
No.
The advantage of the panel in this
right.
case, yeah,
right.
is clear. So some questions from the audience. Interesting approaches, two panel approaches, and then I would say maybe one more traditional attribution approach. Some questions would be great. Oh, we've got someone over there.
Hi, Mark Donatelli, Ogilvy and Mather. Were there any other third-party used in the Kohls example aside from the panel in the overall analysis?
In the initial, well, the third-party data, we used ad-serving data just as the first stage, looking at search, display, and mobile to do the initial MTA attribution analysis. And then when we found those transactions that were modeled to be driven by advertising, which was about 15% of total transactions, we then took that subset of transactions and put that into the comScore panel. So no, we didn't go as far as taking sort of kind of email or those other things that you're talking about.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing about this approach is you could, right? There's no reason why you couldn't. You have the permission, you have the opt-in aspect to it, you have the name and address based on the panel, so you could literally match it to other data sources and then apply it back to this model. So if you have other, you know, if this wasn't a retail, if it was an auto, you had auto intenders and auto buyers and all of that stuff, you could absolutely do that. There's no reason why, because again, you have the name and address, you can match it to any third-party database.
Mm-hmm. Some more questions? We saw earlier that the percentage of clients or of big advertisers already using attribution is quite high, 52, 53%. What do you think are the main barriers for the rest, let's say, the other half of advertisers that are still maybe a little bit more hesitant in using attribution? Where should they start? Where could they start? James?
Sure, I'll jump on this one. I think one of the barriers is complexity, this idea of having yet another vendor in the mix that needs to be managed. If you're dealing with tagging on top of your ad server, you also then have to reconcile counts and deal with those implementation issues. It's really why at Atlas we see this as being something that belongs in the ad server. We're already the count of record for billing to publishers and for payment. And so it really makes it easier to implement. And so we see it as an always-on feature of the platform itself rather than something that's an additional fee or an additional processor or vendor.
Okay, integrated into the current
tagging,
vendors.
there is onboarding down to, there's all sorts of onboarding issues from a cookie down to an individual issues. And let's not forget of privacy as well, right? So people are still very concerned. There were some folks mentioning, you could link it down from an email address. Well, you know what? If the person didn't give you permission to do that, then you really don't have the right to do that. And that's why you only have 50% of folks doing this stuff. So there's all sorts of different issues, but that's why, again, a panel-based approach where you do have an opt-in approach, it's just much cleaner and obviously much safer.
I would endorse what's just been said. I think in many respects we just make things too complicated for clients to buy. I think we just need to make it simple so that people can understand exactly where they can put their money in terms of making the best from this kind of data and analytics. I think that's really the most important point. The other aspect is in some of those organisations that aren't doing it, there'll be no clear owner, no clear stakeholder for this kind of work, and if perhaps there is, that may not be high enough in the organisation. So understanding who that is and kind of pushing that through the organisation is also very important.
Have you seen an increase in the use of attribution for brand purposes? So it's clear, right, when we talk about sales and people can see whether the sale was made or not, or the company can see. What about brand goals? Do you see that as an area of growth for yourselves and for clients?
Not quite as yet. I mean, it's a lot easier for us to look in the retail space, transactional space, to start to match back from that. So it's a little more difficult when you don't have a strong CRM program, when you're not in constant contact with your consumers. To start to do that, I think we've got to think through the impact for that kind of branding exercise as well.
I think we are seeing a lot of that. We're part of the Denser Aegis group, and we're having to understand clearly the longer term impact of kind of the activity. And I think in some cases, some of what we're talking about can lead to very short run tactical actions, and clients are very aware that they're on a journey to move towards an individual understanding of consumers. And in between that kind of transactional sales stuff, there's also understanding the attitudinal and brand aspects. And the data that we've got nowadays that's available can proxy really fast for understanding how brand will change in the future.
Question at the back there.
Serge spoke about.
It's almost time for the coffee break, so hang in there, hang in there.
But it seems to me that I saw a discrepancy in the data. So in your introduction, you had the nice data from the survey where marketers reported 53% of them are using attribution analysis. But in one of the presenters, they showed data from work where 12% in the US of spend is subject to attribution analysis and far less in other countries. So I'm sort of wondering what the panel's opinion about this discrepancy is. Are marketers confused? Are they doing more simplistic approaches, or?
I would say, if I can answer that, but please feel free to the panel, I would say the 52% means we're doing it. It doesn't mean we're doing it for all our spend. We're doing it for small spends. And I think if I look at my own company, of course we're doing it. We're starting small, just really focusing on one aspect of our spend, of the digital spend. So I think that relation is really about the volume. I think the 12% in the US was the spend, right? James, Karl, that you showed.
Absolutely right. It's about volume of spend, and you were looking at number of people. Exactly. And the other thing is my definition was very close around specifically digital attribution. I think yours might have been a bit wider. So.
Another question in the front here? Two questions, I think. It's good to have lots of questions.
Very interesting stuff. My question is for Rob and Serge. Yeah. This may be a crazy question, but in terms of the panelists, and panelists this, are the panelists basically just standing for themselves, or are you trying to project them to others' behavior? And if you are trying to project them, do you have to calibrate that in some way to account for the fact that panelists may be different than the population, or is it just you're just trying to learn from the panel and draw conclusions from that?
This was actual panelists. So this is a one-to-one match of transactors. So we can take from the transaction data, the comScore panel knows who's transacted, so we can then do a timestamp match on transactors, and then go back and look at actual panelists.
I think the question was more about link to the larger population. So if this is what the panel says, how can we apply it to the larger population?
So the sample size was big enough that we didn't model. We just looked at the actual. We're taking the actual people from the MTA study who were modeled to. So the model is in the conversion, and then who's responsive to advertising, and then we can look at those actual people within the comScore panel and look at their behavior. So it wasn't modeled out. It probably could be, and that might be a next stage.
There's no reason why it couldn't be.
Yeah.
We have the demos. We have that we can project to the online population. You can project we can do a bunch of enumeration studies as well. So there's no reason why it couldn't. But in this case, since the sample size was rich enough, why do that? Go ahead and just break it out by existing and new customers based on, like Rob mentioned, on the timestamp of the actual transaction from Kohls' CRM database to our actual database as well. So once you have that exact same timestamp and you know who that individual, then for this purpose we didn't do it. But George, absolutely, there's no reason why you couldn't.
All right.
I think I just want to thank the panel for the input. Thank you for the questions. I hope it shed some light on the attribution topic. I certainly got a few takeaways for me. So thanks very much.
Okay.